In today's episode, we're looking at 4 hunters whose lives were claimed by the very animals they set out to kill. From a bow hunter in Montana fatally gored by a wounded elk, to a man in Tanzania taken down by a second lion hiding in the grass. But first, we begin in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania, where a badly injured bear managed to rise one last time, turning a confident approach into a fatal mistake. October 3, 2011 began in the muted blue haze of pre-dawn over the Carpathian Mountains, not far from the outskirts of Brasov, Romania. The forested ridgelines, steep and tangled with fir, spruce, and moss-covered underbrush, were steeped in a silence broken only by the crack of twigs beneath boots and the distant caw of crows. In these remote valleys, the mist settles thick along the forest floor, muting colors and sound alike. It was a place where predators had the advantage, where humans felt like visitors even with rifles in hand. Claudiu Fenech moved with quiet purpose along a narrow game trail, his breath visible in the early chill. At 39, he was seasoned, not just as a hunter but as a man who understood the rhythms of the wild. Stocky and deliberate, he worked as a game warden part-time but was better known in town for his mechanical skills and calm under pressure. He'd grown up around hunting rifles and long weekends in the forest. Married once, no children, he now spent most of his free time hiking or stalking boar, sharing local schnapps with friends, or keeping an old Land Rover running past its prime. Everyone knew Claudiu would say the same. He wasn't reckless, but he was confident. Maybe too confident for the woods that day. The trio had left before first light, Claudio and 2 of his longtime friends, each armed and familiar with the region. They had been called in to track a nuisance bear, a large male spotted multiple times near rural properties, raiding apiaries and tearing through compost bins. With hunting permits secured and reports growing more urgent, the men moved slowly along a slope known to be part of the bear's range. Claudiu carried a Blazer R8 bolt-action rifle chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum, a powerful round more than capable of dropping large game from 150 yards. He'd used it many times before. He trusted it. The Eurasian brown bear is no minor threat. Among the largest terrestrial carnivores in Europe, adult males regularly exceed 900 pounds and can stand over 8 feet tall on their hind legs. They possess immense strength, enough to flip boulders, tear apart tree trunks, or run bursts of up to 30 miles per hour across uneven terrain. Their claws are over 3 inches long, and their jaws, while not as crushing as a big cat's, are designed to tear, puncture, and maul. Though attacks are rare, a wounded bear is one of the most dangerous animals in the world, driven not by hunger, but by pain and rage. It was just past 7 a.m. when Claudiu spotted the bear through a break in the trees about 130 yards away, downhill, partially obscured by brush. The animal was large, slow-moving, its coat dark and thick with burrs clinging to its flanks. Claudiu crouched low and steadied his rifle. The first shot rang out and echoed through the mountains. The bear staggered, spun once, and collapsed into the thicket. After waiting 2 full minutes with no movement, Claudiu gestured to his friends and advanced cautiously. He kept the rifle shouldered but relaxed, walking the line between vigilance and assumed success. The underbrush at the kill site was thick. Moist earth clung to his boots as he stepped over a branch and spotted the bear lying on its side, chest barely visible through the tangle of leaves and ferns. Claudiu raised the rifle again, but in that split second, the bear moved. It rose fast, too fast, snarling through blood and broken breath, dragging itself upright with a fury that seemed impossible from something so close to death. Claudiu barely had time to react. One swipe caught his forearm, knocking the rifle from his hands and sending it clattering into the rocks. Another paw slammed across his chest, tearing through his jacket and carving deep gashes into flesh and bone. He cried out and stumbled backward, boots slipping on wet soil. He may have tried to run, but there was no time. The bear lunged, clamping its jaws around his torso and yanking him off his feet in one brutal motion. It dragged him several yards into the brush and pinned him beneath its weight, crushing down as it mauled him in a blur of claws and teeth. Claudiu thrashed, tried to fight, but the strength was already leaving his limbs. His friends, frozen at first, heard everything. The thudding impact, the ragged cries, the sickening snap of bone. By the time they reached him, the bear had collapsed just feet away, bleeding out, twitching, and still baring its teeth in a final reflexive snarl. A second shot was fired, but it was clear the animal had already bled out. Claudiu lay curled on his side, blood soaking through his jacket, his rifle lying 6 feet away with fresh claw marks carved across the stock and dirt scuffed in a half circle around the site. Deep gashes ran across his upper chest and abdomen, and his ribs had caved inward from the crush. One leg was mangled at the hip, a boot partially torn. His face was pale, mouth slightly open as if still trying to call out. His death, according to the coroner's report later, had been caused by massive internal trauma and blood loss. He had died within 90 seconds. The bear had managed to crawl another 35 feet before it collapsed and died, a trail of blood and broken branches marking its final moments. The site was cordoned off by forest authorities and examined in detail. Investigators found signs of movement in the underbrush before the attack, suggesting the bear had not died instantly but had instead lain silent, concealed until Claudiu came too close. The first shot had struck just behind the shoulder but missed the heart. A lethal shot in minutes, not seconds. And minutes in this case were far too long. Romanian authorities classified the death as a fatal wildlife incident. The bear's carcass was recovered where it had collapsed a short distance from the scene, and forestry officials documented the site before clearing the area. No additional hunts were authorized in that section of the forest for the rest of the season. Claudiu's family held a closed casket service in Brazov, attended by friends, fellow hunters, and local forestry officials. His rifle, marked with claw scratches and caked with dirt, was eventually returned to his family. Claudiu's death served as a grim reminder to even seasoned hunters. Never assume a downed predator is finished. Brown bears can weigh over 800 pounds and still find the strength to charge, even after a critical shot. In the wild, one misjudgment, one step too soon can be all it takes to turn a successful hunt into a fatal mistake. Claudiu Fenech died beneath the weight of a bear he thought was already dead. Proof that even a perfect shot can leave just enough breath for disaster. But for Malcolm Draycott in Tanzania, the real danger didn't come from the lion he killed, it came from the one he never saw. August 26, 2024 began with a dry breeze curling through the Loliondo game-controlled area, just east of the Serengeti. The ground was brittle, grass burned gold by the late summer sun, and the tracks of zebra and lion pressed deep into the dust like scars. This was hunting country, legal, remote, and unforgiving. At sunrise, Malcolm Draycott stood at the front of the lead truck, scanning the plains as the convoy pushed forward. Everything felt in place, but in the bush, comfort is a warning, because the moment things seem safest is when they're about to go wrong. Malcolm was 44, a self-made man with a quiet intensity. He'd grown up outside Houston, the son of a machinist and a school secretary, and worked his way through oil rigs and construction crews until he built a company of his own. He sold it at 38 and walked away with more money than he could ever spend, then vanished from boardrooms and golf courses entirely. What came next was something he called earning a different kind of respect. He trained with professional guides, learned to track and shoot, and began traveling across southern Africa. His name was known in certain circles, not flashy, not loud, but remembered. He tipped well, followed rules, and didn't flinch when things got messy. Outfitters liked him, trackers trusted him, but underneath the calm was something harder. Malcolm didn't like leaving things undone, and when he set his sights on a lion, it wasn't about thrill, it was about completion. He treated the hunt like a business plan. Every angle covered, every risk accounted for. What he couldn't plan for was the lion he didn't see. By mid-morning, a young male lion was spotted resting in the open near a cluster of stones, his body stretched in the grass, mane tinged with shadow and age. Through his Leupold VX 3i scope, Malcolm steadied his .375 H&H Magnum, drew in a slow breath, and fired. The crack of the shot startled a flock of birds into the air. The lion didn't flinch. He dropped immediately, a clean fall into the brush. The men nodded to each other. It looked perfect. But the savannah doesn't always give you what you see. Sometimes it gives you what you've forgotten to fear. They didn't know it yet, but the lion on the ground wasn't the alpha. It was a younger male, possibly subordinate, possibly trailing the real pride leader. And 40 feet away, obscured by waist-high grass and wind direction, the dominant male had been watching. Malcolm stepped from the vehicle with his rifle at his side and a practiced ease in his walk. He moved slowly, savoring the moment, and stopped just beside the lion's body to nudge the mane with his boot. The guides moved to set up the camera. A few paces back, the trackers stayed alert, though the kill looked routine. Malcolm crouched low to inspect the shot placement, muttering something under his breath, and reached forward to lift the lion's heavy head for a photograph. That's when the second lion struck. There was no growl, no sound at all, just a rush of motion as the hidden alpha burst from the grass at full speed. It hit Malcolm sideways, a blur of fur and muscle slamming into him like a battering ram. The force knocked him completely off his feet. His rifle flew from his grip and clattered against a nearby rock. The lion's jaws closed around Malcolm's neck and shoulder as it dragged him backwards through the dust, shaking him once, then again with terrifying force. His body jerked violently, boots scraping the ground, arms flailing in a brief, stunned attempt to fight back. The guides froze in shock for a heartbeat before scrambling for their rifles. One fired too quickly, the bullet kicking up dust behind the lion's flank. A second round found its mark, grazing the animal's ribcage. The lion didn't let go. It planted one massive paw across Malcolm's chest and drove its teeth deeper, crushing vertebrae and artery alike. Blood sprayed across the grass in dark arcs as Malcolm's body convulsed once, then went slack. A third shot rang out, this time punching through the lion's side. It staggered, snarled, and finally released its grip. The animal collapsed nearby, muscles twitching, blood seeping into the soil as it died facing the body of the man it had just killed. The aftermath was sudden and grim. The trackers, still shaken from the gunfire, scrambled forward and found Malcolm's body sprawled near the carcass of the first lion. His torso was torn open, neck punctured deep, and blood soaked through his shirt into the dust below. His eyes were still open, glazed in shock. His right hand, outstretched toward where the rifle had landed, remained curled as if trying to reach for it even in his last breath. There was no triumphant photo, no moment of pride, only chaos. One of the guides radioed for emergency evacuation, though it was more for protocol than hope. The closest ranger outpost was nearly an hour away, and no one doubted what the outcome would be. They wrapped his remains in a canvas tarp and laid him gently in the bed of the truck. The other lion, the one that had attacked, had already collapsed a few yards away, shot through the ribs by one of the clients, still trembling with disbelief. Malcolm's death was ruled a fatal wildlife incident. Local authorities confirmed the hunt had been legal with all permits intact. No charges were filed, but the hunting company quietly revised its protocols. No more photo ops until the scene was cleared, no more assumptions about lone predators. The party returned to camp in silence, and no further hunts were conducted in that zone for the rest of the season. His remains were flown back to Texas and buried in a private ceremony, attended only by family and a handful of close hunting companions. The story never made headlines, but it didn't have to. Among professional guides and bush veterans, word spread fast. Not as gossip, but as a warning. The lion he shot had never been the threat. The real danger had waited, hidden in the grass, close enough to strike the moment the barrel dipped and the cameras came out. Malcolm had done everything right until the second he assumed he was alone. Malcolm Draycott thought the danger had passed, but the Serengeti had one more surprise waiting in the tall grass. And in the pine-covered hills of Montana, Travis Longmire would face his own fatal mistake. One that came not from a predator, but from something he never saw coming. September 16, 2022 dawned cold and crisp in Montana's Gallatin National Forest, where mist clung to the understory and the sharp scent of pine hung in the air like a warning. Elk rutting season was in full swing, and bugles echoed faintly through the ridges, low and urgent. Gallatin, part of the vast Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, is home to some of the most rugged terrain in the American West. Forest of lodgepole pine and Engelmann spruce laced with game trails and shaded hollows perfect for an ambush. Travis Longmore, 28 years old, knew the area well. He had hunted these woods before, but that day, in a stretch of unmarked timber above a shallow creek bed, something would go terribly wrong. Travis wasn't reckless. Raised in Idaho and based in Bozeman, he worked hard during the week and hunted hard when he could. He preferred bow hunting, closer, quieter, more personal. His compound bow, a Hoyt Carbon RX-3 equipped with Rage broadhead arrows, was tuned to perfection, and his pack was neatly organized down to the last wind checker bottle. Friends called him methodical, patient, the kind of guy who cleaned his gear twice and always left a detailed plan. That morning, he'd driven in before sunrise, parked off a remote fire road, and followed a game trail up through the pines. Around mid-morning, he caught sight of a large bull elk standing broadside near a grove of fir trees. The animal bugled once, turned, and paused just long enough. At 30 yards, Travis took the shot. The Rocky Mountain elk is the largest subspecies of elk in North America. Adult bulls regularly exceed 700 pounds, with racks spanning up to 4 feet wide and tines as long as knives. During the rut, they're high-strung and volatile, driven by instinct and surging testosterone. They'll battle rivals with brutal head-on charges, scatter branches in display of dominance, and when wounded, can enter a final adrenal frenzy that turns even the dying into a deadly force. While most hunters respect the possibility in theory, few ever see it up close. Travis was about to. Following best practice, Travis waited 45 minutes before trailing. The blood trail was steady, rich, and bright red, likely a lung shot. He moved carefully through the brush, stepping over deadfall and ducking beneath low boughs. After nearly 200 yards of tracking, he found the bull lying near a fallen pine, its body slumped sideways and eyes dull. Blood had pooled beneath the animal's chest and its ribcage no longer rose. Travis approached, slowly at first, then confidently. He knocked his bow, lowered it, and stepped into the clearing. He drew out his phone to take a picture. The elk exploded upward. It surged to its feet in a single staggering motion, shoulders heaving, head swinging wide. The first antler caught Travis across the thigh, carving a long gash and sending him sideways. He staggered off balance as the bull turned and charged again. This time it hit full force. One tine drove into his abdomen, another beneath the collarbone. He screamed as he was lifted backwards and slammed against a nearby pine. The bark cracked behind him. He tried to push the elk off, grabbing wildly at its shoulder, but the weight was overwhelming. The bull wasn't striking clean, it was thrashing. Its body spasmed with the last tremors of life, muscles surging, legs kicking up debris as it crushed Travis against the tree. Another jab drove a tine deeper, this time between ribs. Blood soaked his jacket and pooled at his boots. He gasped once, then again weaker. A final lurch from the elk sent him sideways, collapsing into the dirt. The bull staggered, took 2 steps, and collapsed 5 feet away. Both of them lay still. When Travis missed his scheduled check-in window that evening, a friend called the local sheriff's office. A search party formed at first light. His truck was found parked where he'd left it, untouched. Following faint boot tracks and drag marks through the brush, they found the clearing by mid-afternoon. Travis's body was pinned awkwardly against a tree, blood dried into the pine bark. The elk lay nearby, dead at last, its antlers still coated with gore. His bow was buried beneath snapped branches, his phone was found face up in the soil, camera still open but never used. The autopsy confirmed massive internal trauma. 2 of the antler wounds had been independently fatal. The elk had died of its own injuries shortly after the attack, its lungs flooded with blood. Rangers posted a safety notice later that week, reminding hunters, never assume a downed animal is dead, especially when the shot is borderline and the terrain gives it cover. Travis was buried the following Saturday in Bozeman. The service was small, the kind hunters attend in silence. His story didn't make headlines, but across the hunting community it traveled fast, quietly, urgently, like a warning in the woods. Travis Longmire's final mistake came when he mistook stillness for safety. But Lennox Barad in Zimbabwe was never given that illusion. For him, the leopard didn't wait, it struck from above, silent and swift before anyone could raise a rifle. March 12, 2008 broke cool and still across the granite ridges of Matabo Hills in southern Zimbabwe. The sun was just beginning to warm the rock outcrops that jutted from the brush, ancient formations carved by time and wind into natural sentinels overlooking the valleys below. Baobab trees reached their twisted limbs skyward, and shadows lingered in the hollows where leopards liked to rest. This wasn't open savanna. It was closed country, tight, rocky, and perfect for ambush predators. And it was here that a 47-year-old man named Lennox Barad rose before dawn to prepare for the kind of hunt no one took lightly. Lennox had grown up in nearby Kezi, just east of the park boundary. He wasn't a trophy hunter nor a tourist. He was a seasoned bushman, a tracker, and a licensed hunter who often assisted the parks department when local wildlife grew too bold. Quiet and even-tempered, Lennox was well known in the region as a man who knew the land, and more importantly, the animals that lived on it. He'd hunted baboons that raided crops, warthogs that tore through fences, and on more than one occasion, problem leopards that had gotten too comfortable near the villages. His respect for the bush was hard-earned. He didn't brag, he didn't rush, but this time something had gone wrong. Over the past week, 3 goats had been taken from a small homestead just beyond the basalt ridge that separated the forest edge from cultivated fields. The signs were clear. Claw marks, drag trails, and a half-eaten carcass left hanging in the fork of a tree. Only one animal did that. A call went out to Lennox. He arrived that afternoon with a small team, 2 junior trackers and a bolt-action Rigby rifle chambered in .275, ideal for the terrain. They set bait, mounted a hide, and waited. At dusk on the second day, movement stirred behind the thorn bush near the bait pile. Lennox raised the rifle and fired. The shot hit, but not cleanly. The leopard bolted into the rocks, a dark blur swallowed by stone and shadow. Blood drops dotted the trail. The trackers wanted to wait until morning, but Lennox insisted they follow. Time was critical. A wounded leopard didn't leave itself vulnerable, it doubled back, found cover, and waited. And when it struck, it didn't bluff, it went for the throat. The African leopard is not the largest of the big cats, but pound for pound, it's one of the most formidable. Adult males weigh between 130 and 200 pounds, but their muscular build allows them to haul prey twice their size into trees. Their retractable claws are razor sharp. Their bite force is nearly 700 psi, more than enough to sever tendons or crush windpipes. And unlike lions that often roar or posture before charging, leopards strike in silence. In rocky terrain like Metabo, they're nearly invisible until they move. Lennox followed the blood trail past a collapsed gully and into a thicket of jumbled rocks and scrub. The trail turned sharply up a slope where granite boulders stacked like stairs beneath a steep overhang. The cat was nowhere in sight. He stepped forward slowly, eye scanning the brush ahead. Behind him, the trackers fanned out in a cautious arc, rifles raised. No one saw what waited above. The leopard had doubled back and climbed into a ledge hidden by sun and shadow. It was bleeding heavily from the haunches, but alive, barely, and full of adrenaline. As Lennox passed beneath, it dropped. It landed hard, its full weight slamming into Lennox's back with the force of a dropped boulder. The leopard's jaws locked instantly onto the base of his neck, teeth diving into muscle and artery in one crushing bite. The two tumbled downslope in a chaotic blur of claws, dust, and broken bush. As they rolled, the impact cracked one of Lennox's ribs and drove the breath from his lungs. He hit the ground with a wet thud, stunned but conscious, and reached for his rifle with fingers already slick with blood. The barrel scraped rock as he tried to lift it, but the cat was already on top of him again. Its claws tore into his shoulder and raked down across his ribcage, leaving open flesh in their wake. Lennox kicked, twisted, fought, but his body was losing strength by the second. Blood pooled quickly in the dust beneath him, and the leopard, driven by pain and instinct, shook him once, twice, then let go. A shout rang out from the rocks above. The trackers, panicked and out of position, fired warning shots into the air to try and scare the cat. But it didn't bolt. It limped a few steps away, growled low and hoarse, and collapsed near the roots of a stone fig tree, its chest heaving with the final effort of a dying predator that had made sure not to die alone. The recovery was frantic and desperate. The trackers scrambled downslope through thorn and loose stone, rifles still raised as they approached the blood-darkened clearing. They reached Lennox within seconds, but the scene was already still. His eyes were glassy, his mouth slightly open, and his body limp against the dirt. One man pressed fingers to his neck and whispered something, but there was no pulse. The artery had been severed cleanly. Blood loss had been rapid and total, less than a minute, and nothing more could be done. There was no time for grief. The men moved quickly, wrapping Lennox's body in a canvas poncho and lashing together a makeshift litter of mopane branches to carry him down the ridge. The leopard's body was found a short distance away, already stiff, sprawled against the rocks in a final sprawl of exertion. Its original wound had torn through the hindquarters and bled it out slowly, but not before it had turned back for a last strike. The animal was photographed, tagged for official records, and retrieved later by wildlife authorities. In the weeks that followed, no mount was requested, no hide was displayed. Lennox's death was classified as a fatal wildlife incident, and the investigation confirmed everything had been done by the book. But policy changed. No more solo tracking within ambush terrain. No more pursuit of injured predators without perimeter control. His funeral was held 3 days later beneath the shade of a mopane tree near his family's home. Neighbors came in from across the district, many on foot, to pay their respects. No one spoke loudly, no one called it bad luck. They called it what it was. The price of underestimating an animal that had made silence its greatest weapon. For all his skill and experience, Lennox had made one critical mistake. He looked ahead but not above. And in that high country of rocks and dust, that was all it took. Thanks for watching this video. If you loved this video, you'll for sure also love the one on your end screen right now. Hope to see you there.